View from the Gutters, episode 91.
Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book.
On this episode, we discuss J. Michael Straczynski's Thor, and, to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 5039.
This will be the quietest introduction ever made on View from the Gutters.
I just did it. That was it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Welcome to View from the Gutters, episode 91. I'm Tobias Hanshin.
Brant Gillahan-Eddy.
Haley Fleeman.
And I'm Kid Reynolds.
Yeah, we don't fuck around when I do the introduction. There's none of this like 15 minutes of jocularity and laughing and obscure references going on. It's just like, no, this is what's happening right now.
Business time.
I didn't even know we were starting. I was browsing Facebook on my phone.
That's how quick I am. Like the introduction happens and you don't even know that it's happened. It's just done and we're right into it.
In fact, you know what? The podcast's over. We talked about everything that we need to.
Good job, everybody.
Wow.
Well done.
I feel so unfulfilled.
So, Joe, not here this week. He's still in cookie hell. I kind of expected him to rise from the dead after like 3-4 days. Oddly, has not happened.
Well, if he had risen from the dead after 3 days, there might be some other interesting ramifications for that, considering that
Keep in mind that
frame
this is cookie hell, not actual hell.
Yeah, I've never...
Really, it's not so much that he's dead. He's just writhing in the corner in cookie agony.
Yeah, I never really understood the cookie thing, so it just seems like
well,
a
that's because
strange
you haven't
thing.
listened to any of the old episodes.
That may or may not be true.
Well, if you had listened to them, you would know all
I've
about
listened to some of them.
the evolution of cookie jail.
I see.
The table we had back in Chard's garage got turned, and so the people on the other side could not get out until we ended the podcast and moved the table. That's where it comes from. So we called it cookie jail because if they wanted a cookie, they had to ask
it was
for
specifically that Joe sat down and then he couldn't get out without everybody else moving. And Chard had made cookies and he went to go get cookies and Joe was like, I want a cookie too. And Chard said no. And Joe's like, I'm going to go get a cookie then. And he's like, no, you're in cookie jail. You're stuck there.
I see.
Chard, meanwhile, I don't know where the hell he is. He was loading up a duffel bag with passports and money. He said he had a job to do. He couldn't be here for work-related reasons. So wherever he is, Chard, go with God.
Remember, the Venezuelan ambassador's guards all shoot slightly high and to the left. Oh, wait.
Yes. Meanwhile, we're all here recording a podcast, and we're talking about Thor. By J. Michael Straczynski. And once again, Brant,
J-Strack.
this was your pitch.
Yes.
So, what did you think about Thor?
Glorious.
Tell me the glorious things about J. Michael Straczynski's run on Thor.
I like this book for a lot of different reasons. I have been relatively impressed with Marvel's larger scale events and kind of the sense that they actually are really impacting the world in a way that I don't think was true. And this started right around the time of Civil War, which happens relatively close to the beginning of this series. So I like the fact that this is a series that actually demonstrates that Civil War had real implications. So I enjoy it for its kind of the puzzle piece that it fits within the larger Marvel universe at the time. But I also think this particular book serves also as a very excellent, like, you don't need to necessarily know anything particularly about Thor, and it's a great Thor read. It's a good way to introduce the character. And one of the things that was occurring to me on the way here was that, there was a lot of grumbling about Kenneth Branagh being picked to direct the first Thor movie. And some commentators in the world pointed out that actually he'd be a really good pick because his background in Shakespeare and things like that made him ideally suited to being like, how do you lend legitimacy to a bunch of people walking around being like, thou art a villain, blah, 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 blah. And I feel the same way about J. Michael Straczynski on this particular book.
I really don't get that whole, like, no, Kenneth Branagh. Like, that's the perfect, I mean, especially Kirby's Asgardians were very Shakespearean to begin with.
I think people just tended not to think about that connection. And I think Straczynski has a very good history with creating kind of very interesting set pieces with people talking in deep and meaningful ways, but still having things happen. I mean,
he's definitely got that operatic quality that
and I think
worked really well with Thor.
Yeah, and I think it served the series well. So I appreciated it for kind of its touchstoning of previous events. I also appreciate it because it also foreshadowed some events that would impact the universe as a whole, but then it itself is in very well encapsulated Thor story or Thor run. I also appreciated the one thing that I kind of don't like about the full group that we read was that at one point, Oliver or Olivier or however you say his name, Coipel or Coipel or whatever.
That dude
whose art is awesome.
And his art is awesome. And I say the good artist, not because the other guy who's got a very Polish, I think, name.
Yeah.
I can't remember it off the top of my head. I'm not saying his art is bad by any stretch of the imagination. He's just not quite as good as
right. Well, it's a different style and it has a different feel, and that ultimately is always a bummer to me when a series doesn't have kind of a consistent art voice.
Right.
And it didn't feel to me that this change in art was directly related to a change in the tone of the story. It was just like, oh, he's not available anymore. We need somebody else. Because there are some series like we've talked about.
Well, they go back and forth.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They do.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like he's a fill-in artist. He's not a replacement artist.
Right. And it didn't feel like it was tied to anything specific to the narrative. So
yeah, absolutely.
But the other thing that I was saying, because it ties into foreshadowing, is that one of the fallouts of Civil War and Planet Hulk and kind of the general premise of the Illuminati that shows up, which is, just in case anyone doesn't know out there in listener land, is Reed Richards, Tony Stark, T'Challa, the Black Panther, Black Bolt, and Professor X, and Doctor Strange.
And Namor.
Is there really 7 of them?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I guess it is. Form this council of people who feel like they have to make big, important decisions like...
No, wait. Maybe there are only 6 because it's 6 Infinity Gems that they have.
Yeah.
I think one person leaves and they replace him with somebody else.
Black Panther says he wants nothing to do with it.
That's right.
And then they either...
Anyway.
So anyway... which was a good call in the end.
Yeah, just a bit.
So one of the, and they make decisions about Infinity Gems and shooting Hulk into space and a number of other things. But one of the things that happens in the Dark Reign transition after Civil War is that a counter Illuminati establishes itself with Lady Loki, Doctor Doom, Emma Frost,
the Cabal.
Who else is
well, it's Norman Osborn, I think, is.
Norman Osborn. Yeah,
he's the one who's putting it together.
Right. So I like the foreshadowing of Doom and Loki kind of having machinations with each other, and who doesn't like Doctor Doom showing up and doing his thing? So his Doom things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is actually a really great run, and unfortunately, it suffers from the problem of a lot of great JMS runs, which is that he doesn't get to finish it in the way that he wants to. He kind of reaches a certain point, and then he gets shuffled off.
Yeah.
But Kaylee, what did you think about this book?
I really enjoyed it, actually, which is surprising because I'm usually really apprehensive of superhero movies or comics, not movies. I enjoy them. But I thought Thor was a really great introductory read because I don't know a lot about Thor, but I've read Civil War. So I had that background, and reading this run sort of helped color I remember this happening and this going on. And it was just really cool to see the ramifications of Tony Stark's actions affect his friendships with Thor. And just, it was fantastic. I greatly enjoyed it. And I loved the art, especially the faces.
Yeah.
Just
that is actually something I wanted to talk about, and I'm gonna do a little rebound thing here and just say it's a crying shame that Joe isn't here to talk about this book, because I know the Thor Tony Stark showdown is one of his favorite moments in comic books.
Yeah, and I have to say, as somebody who was actually reading a lot of the work out of Marvel at that time, there was all this kind of weird competing energy, because Civil War itself was kind of, at least from my perspective, was interesting and it had some really good ideas, but the standalone series jumped in a weird way. It had some timing issues, and so
there were execution problems.
For it, and so
I don't feel that Civil War worked without reading a lot of the tie-ins.
Yeah, exactly. And And of course, one of the big events in Civil War is that Tony Stark and Reed Richards create a Thor robot clone thing that ends up killing an innocent bystander, quote unquote, another superhero who's fighting on the anti-registration
Ragnarok, right?
Yeah, is the name.
Well, they were calling him Clor for a while.
Yeah,
and then later they gave him his own name, which was Ragnarok. And I think he last showed up in the Thunderbolts.
Yeah,
in another dimension, like you do.
Because he was on the Avengers during Dark Reign, wasn't he? As the Thor.
I think for a little while.
Okay.
I think during Dark Reign for a while, Ares was the Thor. I mean, he wasn't Thor; he was Ares, but he was filling that role of the god.
Yeah.
On the team. Go ahead, Brand.
Oh, sorry. But the other thing was that, of course, you know, J. Michael Straczynski was somebody who already at that point had kind of a mixed reception with comic fans, and so some folks were excited for it, and other people were really not excited. And there was a lot of like hand-wringing about like how would whoever took over handle Thor coming back and quote unquote addressing the ways in which Civil War affected everything, and specifically how someone who looks just like him was responsible for killing another superhero. And I think Straczynski hit it perfectly, both in the tone of their actual interaction with each other, where I mean, that splash page is epic. I would have words with thee, and you're just like, holy shit, that's about to be all kinds of bad for Tony Stark. And then just the whole response to, well, you're on American soil and you're going to have to follow the rules. And it's like, I'm a fucking god. No, I won't. And I remember at the time, like, I get excited by comics in general, but I remember being like literally elated when I picked up that issue. Because it was just I felt so pitch and tone perfect to have Tony Stark, who's not exactly a 100% villain, but is still kind of an arrogant ass, be like, well, Thor, I guess you're going to have to get used to the way things are now. And Thor's just kind of like, nah.
Yeah, and it was Tony Stark at the height of his dickishness.
Yeah.
Like post-Civil War, while he was director of S.H.I.E.L.D., was the dickiest that Tony Stark has ever been, I think.
Unless you maybe count like utterly drunk, fumbling.
Demon in a bottle.
Yeah. Iron Man.
But in any case, that moment was incredibly cathartic, and I think diminished only slightly by the fact that basically every writer down the line was doing their own stick it to Tony Stark moment.
Yeah.
You had it in this, you had it in Nova, you had it in the Eternals. I'm pretty sure that there's a moment like that happens at one point in Captain America. Like everybody was like, yeah, I'm going to fucking stick it to Tony Stark. So it was, I think it diminished in the aggregate, like if you were reading everything, but reading it, like kind of going back and just looking at this, like it comes off incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And I really do love that moment because I think JMS did it as well, if not better than anybody else. But going back to the point that Kaylee was making when I interrupted her, I love the redesign on Thor because this is, I think, the first time that he was. Well, I guess it's not the first time because he's gone through a bunch of different designs over the years, but he was in his classic Thor costume up until this run.
Right.
And actually, a lot of stuff from this run made it into the Thor movie.
Right.
The hammer crashing in the Midwest, the line of people trying to lift it, Thor's new armor with kind of like the chainmail-y looking arms.
Yeah, the tunic, whatever you want to call it.
And I really love that design. Like it makes, it felt really cool at the time. Like he wasn't quite in the stage costume look.
Right.
Like it actually looked like like something that a warrior would wear.
Right.
But the way that they drew his face, like it just looks like a brick with like kind of this little bulge of a nose on it.
Oh, I kind of like that.
Like, I mean, it's interesting, it's distinct, but it always struck me as like really weird. Like Thor just looks like this hulking mass. Like he looks like the Hulk should look in my mind in this run.
Interesting.
Did you have more that you wanted to say, Kaylee?
Well, with the faces, I kind of agree that Thor has like a very like stoic face, but Dr. Don Blake doesn't, and it's very warm, it's very inviting, and so you get to see like the difference between the two. And then Loki's face was my favorite, just hands down. Just certain faces that she would make.
Lady Loki is an incredible design.
It was just fantastic, and that really sold the series for me. It was just sort of the characterization.
Yeah, and I think as evidenced by the fact that people are still cosplaying as her.
Well, and something that occurs to me, and I'd love to get your input on this, Kaylee, is that in retrospect, especially considering how much has exploded in the last few years about representation of gender and race and everything else in comics, the Lady Loki thing is timed this really interesting way where it was probably the barest edge where you could probably ever get away with, quote, being made a woman as a punishment, as though that would be a punishment in any way, really. But I feel like JMS does a really good job of making it clear that in his characterization of Lady Loki, that A, you can never keep Loki down. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing to him. And B, like, and what I mean by that is that he uses the tools he has to his advantage. Like, Lady Loki is presented as somebody who's willing to use her apparent beauty and charm to winnow her way out of men, but it feels like a genuine use of that character rather than being like, well, I got boobs now, so I guess people will listen to what I do. And I also think that he also does a good job of characterizing why Loki himself would see that as a punishment, as opposed to it just being like, yeah, isn't being a woman a drag? Which I was thinking about earlier today. I'm like, that is an incredibly
Well, yeah, you have to keep in mind that
silly-
the only person who calls it a punishment is Loki. And Loki always lies.
Well,
like he's
yeah.
he's trying to evoke specific emotions by saying, "Oh, Thor punished me by putting me in this body."
Was it Thor or Odin who put him in the body?
No, it was Thor, because Thor's the one
Odin did it.
who brought everybody back.
Yeah.
Odin was long dead at that point.
Well, I guess Odin did it originally because I think he's been a woman before.
I don't remember
But maybe not.
specifically.
I thought there was a Lady Loki back in
But,
the
you know, I mean,
80s.
Loki has been known
Yeah.
for taking other forms. I mean, historically, he took the form
Right.
of a lady horse, which he
Right.
then got pregnant and gave birth to a foal, who he then gave to Odin as his mount. So Odin likes to ride his own grandson around,
Yeah,
which
you know,
is awesome.
like you do.
But much more recently, and I can't remember off the top of my head what the exact context is. Loki is talking to somebody about how like he changes forms and appears as different things, but Loki is always like Loki isn't male, Loki isn't female, Loki is Loki. And I do remember it's from Original Sins, the 10th realm, when Loki and Thor go to heaven, where Angela is from, and they're confronting the angels of heaven. Loki switches sides and turns himself in female because all the angels of heaven are female, and he wants to blend in and be a part of their team. And he basically makes a comment at that point like, my form doesn't matter. I'm Loki. Loki is Loki, whatever form Loki takes. And I think that's a really good statement, and I think it flows together organically with what he's doing in this series.
Yeah.
Because Loki doesn't care if he appears male or female. He just needs to manipulate people.
Right.
And he's using his apparent gender as another manipulation.
Right.
But it's still an awesome design.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually funny how many awesome designs there are for Loki.
I actually think in general the character costume design in this series, I like Heimdall's look. I like the way that the Sif and the Brave Three, like I feel like a lot of the characters got a visual overhaul that was kind of like, let's make them look less like they're on a stage play in a college Shakespeare festival and like talk about what stylized armored warriors would look like. Because one of the things that is central to the conceit of the events that lead up to this, right, Ragnarok and some of the things that will come later in
Fear itself
is that while on Earth they're basically unbreakable people, they often adventure in realms where they are still in physical and mortal danger. So the idea of Thor walking around in like nothing but a t-shirt is kind of silly, in so much that he has spent most of his life doing things in places where he actually could get cut and smashed and broken. So yes, he would wear armor, you would think.
Yeah.
And so do the others. And I like the fact that a lot of them it's brought into more of a visual style that seems acknowledged.
Yeah, especially because some of their designs just hadn't aged well. And I think the Warriors 3 actually were changed the least out of any of them.
Yeah, I think they're
compared to like Balder or Heimdall.
Right.
Sif also to a lesser extent. But I really like all the new designs, and I mean they've basically stuck around at this point.
Yeah, I feel
mean
like
Thor has
Sif's
kind of
maybe
changed his armor up a
bit.
little bit. Sif's has changed some.
It's bounced around too.
Yeah, she's not really favoring that like headpiece as much anymore that she used to wear.
Who would?
Her 2 Fs.
That's right.
That's all I could see.
They're wings, man, wings. Stylized,
right?
Wings.
Cade, how did you feel about the book?
Okay, so there were parts of it that I really, really liked and parts of it that I didn't. And when I say didn't, it's just this one thing, and that is...
There's not parts you didn't like. There's part you didn't like.
Okay, yes. There is a part of it that I didn't like, and that was some of the art, but there were multiple instances of this, actually. And that is, in some of the, like, single page, so not like splash page... Well,
right.
not double-sided splash page. I don't know what the name for it.
Single splash, not double
yeah,
splash.
single splash. There you go.
Yeah, single-page art spread or pinup or whatever. You know, that he's supposed to look heroic and whatnot. Sometimes he has baby face. And it really pulled me out of the moment. And it was like... Heroic Thor is a toddler.
Well, everybody knows that beard Thor is better than clean-shaven Thor. Everybody knows it. Don't deny it.
Eric Masterson, where have you gone?
And I think it's
dead?
just that in some of the instances, he had more of like a chubby, round face.
Yeah, that's what I'm
out.
saying. Like the way his face was drawn was kind of weird because it was this kind of like big lump with a little bit of a nose on it. Which is weird.
For the most part, though, the art was really good, and
Yeah,
especially the action scenes.
I was going to say, especially the set pieces, like when Thor is summoning Asgard forth and you see it coming out of the storm and just looking at these like massive towers and huge walls and giant promenades that are all completely empty. And then tiny little Thor is like strolling through them all by himself. Like you get a sense of the weight of his loneliness. Like I thought it was absolutely great.
Yeah, and the way that Boar sees in the later...
Oh, yeah.
When he comes back and he sees through a hell dimension-ish
Did we?
thing.
I know that
looks
he
amazing.
dies in this, but did we ever see more of Boar? Because I thought that was really cool, like bringing him back.
I haven't been as up on the current stuff by like Aaron. I just started reading it again because I support Lady Thor. Lady Thor 2014. So I don't know for sure, but at least for that period of time, I don't think he gets revisited.
Okay.
And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean...
if someone out there knows,
like
tell us.
Loki traveling through time and doing the thing with Boar and setting up events and then bringing him back. Like it was... I honestly found it heart-wrenching a little bit. And the way that it was executed was
especially
really cool.
with the scene between Loki and his young self. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
The way he's like, if you want this... I know the way you can manipulate this to have this happen. It's that's a little creepy, but awesome.
just the way that Loki spends this entire series, like slowly building up his plan. Like from the very beginning, we know that he's plotting with Dr. Doom. And you see him kind of slowly executing his plan, maneuvering pieces, maintaining just enough of an air of legitimacy to keep people off his back. Like you can see him setting things up, going every step of the way, like, no, don't trust him. Like, you know, he's up to something. Right. And they're like, I know you're up to something. I can't prove it. And I don't know what it is. And I'm going to put a sword through your gut when I do. And yet nobody seems to be able to avoid that build up to betrayal. Like, I honestly feel like this is one of JMS's, like, really strong, like, his strong writing points. Like, he's able to set up events so well. Yeah. He did it incredibly well in Rising Stars.
The first
Spider-Man.
The first part is Spider-Man. And again, JMS never has a good ending.
Yeah.
Whether he gets to end the book or not. I mean, how long did it take him to actually finish Rising Stars?
Well, and I think that's some of why that series suffered.
Yeah.
I didn't actually think it ever correctly ended.
Well, yeah. I mean, at least get, by the end of volume 3, you at least get back to where it started.
It concludes,
with
let's say that.
With Poet in the Graveyard. But
because I actually had a friend ask me just today, like, whatever happened with Rising Stars, like, and I was like, I think he just went out of work And that was kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened really was that he did so well with the first part of it that he got pulled into other projects. And then by the time he had enough, because I mean, that was part of the big wave of like JMS as independent creator, right? Because he did that and Midnight Nation, and Joe's Comics was a sub imprint of Top Cow, I think. And like he was going to do all these things, and then he got pulled in by Marvel, I believe.
Yeah, he got really big in comics
to do Spider-Man
quickly, and then kind of lost momentum a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like unfortunately his career was one of probably the best proving grounds for the current model of like how creators would balance personal versus big two projects. That we've seen a lot more success from folks like Brubaker and Kirkman got out entirely of big two projects. But Remender, right? Like I think unfortunately Straczynski was just on the cutting edge of that kind of blowing up in the way that it was, and I think probably, unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be in a position to go back to it, either because his contract won't let him or he just doesn't have the drive to go back to his other projects. But I don't know what the deal is there, because I'm pretty sure he's still on retainer at DC.
Well,
they're not publishing anything from him, as far as I know.
He was just doing an independent project, Apocalypse Hal.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, which was, I mean, Chard could probably talk about this better than I could because he read more of it. It was a really interesting supernatural detective story that was marred by the incessant cheesecake shots of the main character. Like incredibly gratuitous cheesecake shots. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was him or the artist that he was working with or demands of the publisher or what, but it felt really weird. And I mean, I think it's still ongoing. I think it might be on issue like 5 or 6 at this point. But I couldn't get into it because it seemed, I don't know what exactly.
JMS to me is one of those writers where I really love his work. I feel that he gets overworked and he doesn't put as much thought into each thing as it goes along.
Yeah.
He does really good with the planning at the beginning.
I was literally just thinking that what they should do is hire him as pure idea man, because even people really got, you talk about some of the things that people say about Dan Slott on Spider-Man. People were so all over the place about the Other and JMS's work on that, but clearly he laid groundwork that was plenty usable, because the whole event that's happening now is tied in a big part to a lot of what JMS laid down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so whether or not his particular execution of some of those set pieces was good, clearly he had a really great cabal of characterization and ideas
and he
around it.
created Babylon 5.
Well, yeah.
So right there, he's a good idea man.
Well, really, they should have had him on a show like Lost, locked in a broom cupboard somewhere, just like plotting everything out and like passing notes under the door to the actual script writers who turn those things into episodes, because Lost had really good individual episodes, but the plot never gelled into anything. And I think that that's really the role that J. Michael Straczynski would flourish best in, is as a universe runner, in the way that, is it Grant Morrison or Jeff Johns who is like chief creative officer?
Jeff Johns.
Like, okay, so what Jeff Johns is doing in terms of like, this is the guiding vision for the DC universe or whatever it is that they're doing exactly. But just have him there.
And
like,
for Jeff Johns, it's not the new
here's the 5-year plan for these like grand overarching events that are going to happen. Okay, everybody, Writers Summit. Let's figure out how everything plugs into this.
Well, Bendis plays that role for Marvel, right?
Right.
Or has in the past. I don't know if he's still solidly sitting in that role.
But I think that there definitely is a role for somebody whose role in a universe like Marvel has and like DC has is just to go like, here are the grand overarching events that are going to happen. Like this in-universe year, like, there's, this is going to happen and this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And these are like the events that are described into the history books. Now let's all figure out like how everybody works within that framework.
Or even, here are some neat ideas for this character. Can somebody
plug that into what else there's going on?
Well, yeah. Can somebody use those ideas and make them better and make something more that they want to write, but using the nuggets that JMS planted. Not necessarily his exact idea, but, the seeds.
And, I don't want to speak down to J. Michael Straczynski because I love the stuff that he does, but...
Well, absolutely. Midnight Nation
too
is one of my
often when
favorite
it comes
books.
to execution, we get Superman grounded.
Yeah.
Which,
such a dark stain on his illustrious career.
I love you as a writer, and yet you occasionally just churn out Superman grounded. Why? Why do you do that?
I think I understand. I mean, I think I've always understood what he was trying to do.
Yeah, I know what he was trying to do.
It's just, it was just so
It's just
clunky.
he never managed to execute it in a way that really worked.
And I have a really mixed relationship with Superman Earth 1 for kind of a similar reason.
Did he write that?
Yeah. Like, he's got some really interesting ideas in there, but there's also just some parts of it where I'm like,
Well, it's Invasion of the Juggalo aliens.
I actually kind of like the design, and I feel like that's an unfair characterization.
Oh, it's absolutely an unfair characterization, but it's so fun to say.
Yeah.
Invasion of the Juggalo aliens.
I like that characterization. So, Kaylee, I noticed you have some more things written down.
Oh, yeah. I took notes.
Oh, good. Yes, let's hear more notes.
I was on top of things this week. I wanted to kind of talk about Thor as a person, and how he deals with arrogant assholes like Iron Man, which we talked about already, but also how he deals with the townspeople. Because I thought that was really interesting. He's this god and he has all this power and he knows it. And sometimes he gets snarky with them, but generally he's polite and he tries to abide by their expectations at the very least. When the cops come out after he has built Asgard or summoned Asgard, and they're like, well, you can't build this here on this land. This is private property. And he's like, okay, so what you're saying is I can't build on this land. And they're like, yes. Okay. And so he lifts it into the air 8 feet. There. It's not on the land anymore. And I just love that because it's just so okay, you know what? I will humor you, but I'm a god and I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting story in that sense because you've had a status quo with Thor where he's brash, arrogant, warlike. What do they say in the movie? What does Odin say in the movie? Cruel, vain child.
Yeah.
I forget it. What?
Yeah, I don't remember the line.
But
Those lines.
He's had the status quo as he's the Odin son. He's the warrior who goes out and smashes things, and Odin is always there to lay down the law. Odin's not there anymore. The Asgardians aren't there. Thor is by himself. He's now king of Asgard. He's making the rules for the first time by himself with no one to tell him what to do. He's obviously accrued over the years a sense of humility somewhat, an understanding that
Empathy.
humans are worthwhile and that he needs to protect them, but he is still a god and not necessarily beholden to the laws of man. And he's walking this very interesting line, and we're seeing Thor have to think and act in ways that he's never had to think and act before. And it all feels incredibly natural. It doesn't ever feel weird or you're going oh, wow, that's weird. What's going on here? It's oh yeah, that seems right. That makes sense.
And I feel like one of the sensations that I got reading this scene where he floats Asgard was this really great mix of both, I'm a god and I'm going to do this. I'm going to operate within the parameters that you've set, but there's also kind of almost like this alienness to it in the way that he's so precise about it. He's like, okay, so if I get this right, based on your rules, it's about this very strict linear plane of existence that is this dirt right here. So yeah, I have power, I'm going to use it, but also that basically means I'm doing what you want, right? It is this weird mixture of I'm trying really hard not to just be a brazen dick. am I succeeding? And he's so like, and I feel like they do a good job of drawing him and presenting him in this way where it's like, I can't remember exactly what the circumstance is, but, he tells the Asgardians, like, you can go over there and, try to be decent. But, and he like goes to them and says, we'll try to help you, whatever that might, look like, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he's not 100% sure what it means, but he's kind of like, yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I also love that like the Asgardians try to play nice in this
Yeah.
town too, like that they go to the coffee, cake, and tea, ice cream social and stuff, and they're like, we're here, and they like attend the town meeting, and they are trying so
We
hard
just throw it over
to-
the walls.
like
Yeah.
just
Well, the nearest wild boars are in Texas. Yes, I walked a long way to get these boars, and then I punched them.
Dad, how come you never punched a boar to knock it out?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think my absolute favorite moment about in that regard actually comes at the very end when the Warriors of Three have left Asgard and they go and Bill's gone and the place is closed and the guys are like, you know how to make omelets? And Volstag's like, oh, I'll make an omelet like you've never seen, and they like break in, and you don't get you don't get to see it in what we read. But I guess I'll just spoil it for everybody and say the Warriors 3 start running that diner for a while.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. Like they're just hanging out there cooking meat.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of this, they were doing that.
Yeah, at the very end, but like that's something that continues.
Yeah. It's not just
and
like
was
a
very
one-off.
cool. I also really loved the whole interaction between Thor and Donald Blake in this, because you get that like Shazam, Captain Marvel like interplay between Thor and Dr. Dr. Blake.
The Shazam, not Captain Marvel. We're sorry.
Stop that. It's Captain Marvel. It's always been Captain Marvel. It'll never not be Captain Marvel.
No, it's Shazam. It's
Forever
what the
and ever
trademark
and
says,
ever.
I swear.
But like even when he was Dr. Blake originally, like you didn't get that interplay.
Well, and I feel like, Donald Blake as a character really basically disappeared for most of the aughts. I don't know that he showed up all too often.
No. He disappeared at the beginning of Walt Simonson's run.
Back in 88, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't even think it was as late as 88. It was like 84.
Was it? I feel like Donald Blake was back off and on in the 90s in some weird way, but maybe
I don't remember that.
I think they did
because there was Eric Masterson for a long time in the
Right.
90s there.
But he, as far as I know, he disappeared at the beginning of Walt Simonson's run and did not return until this moment.
Yeah.
Like he says, like I was erased from existence. And I continue to be erased from existence until the spell that made me not exist stopped existing.
Right.
Which was cool.
Yeah, that was a good way to
I
work
did
on it.
really like about this that the first page is the same, well, almost the same. It's a little different, but it's almost the same as the last page of Thor Disassembled. Because, like, in the last page of Thor Disassembled, it's him with the starry background, and he says, I will do what I must, and I will go to sleep. And then the first page of this, it's Thor with the starry background, almost the same, but colored differently, and it says, I slept and I dreamed. I dreamed, and then...
I have dreamed such dreams.
Yeah.
I was a man dreaming I was a god. I was a god dreaming I was a man. I have known passion. I have known loss. I have known the stars. I have known failure. I have known pain. I have known war and the end of all things. And then I went to sleep and went away and were no more.
Yeah, so the end of Thor Disassembled was him going to sleep, which I thought was really cool that this just picked up from right there, because that was the last Thor book before this. And that ended with like Thor 588 or something.
I was commenting bitterly to Tobiah last week that the numbering on this run is really silly because it's like Thor number 1 through 7 and then Thor number 600 through whatever, because of course they hit 600. They're like, oh, we're switching back to the traditional numbering. It's like, come on, guys. I get it. You got to sell your extra 20,000 copies or whatever it is you think you're going to get.
Yeah, well, and then they booted the 7 Years of Marvel thing.
Yeah.
To go into.
So did you have more on your list of notes, Kaylee?
Let us see.
Oh, well, she's doing that. I did want to mention
yes.
Bill the Third.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that whole storyline, and especially the part where he's like trying to teach them basketball and they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like,
what if he conceals his points to use to attack me later? That's great.
Yeah.
I actually really liked Kelda as a character. I thought she was really interesting, the way that she was both. So, I mean, she's kind of like this young, sexy woman, but then she's also sort of detached. Mm-hmm. And they never come out and exactly say it, except insofar as she calls herself Kelda Stormrider later in the series, and like she creates the ice spear. But it's like, what is she the god of? Because, I mean, obviously Thor is the god of thunder, and I always got the impression that like she's the god of the north wind or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, kind of a god of wind and ice. And she like finds herself in love with this human man. And I really love the conversation between them after Balder has given Bill his cloak. And she's talking about like the lives of immortals, like objects lose their permanence because they always come back to us eventually. And, you know, it's no small thing to, I mean, she has this whole thing talking about like being given the cloak of a king. Like for the king, it's no big deal, but for you, it's huge. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they talk about the unicorns, which was...
I did like how much humor was in this book.
Yeah, and I feel like it was interspersed really well so that you felt like it was serious when it was serious and it was humorous when it was humorous, but it didn't feel like, oh, I'm reading a comedy comic, or it felt like out of tone.
Like a good example of that's with like Kelda and Billy, where like Billy's like, is Kelda home? And like the Warriors are like... Kelda, like
yeah,
it was so good because it was just like they know exactly what's up.
Yep.
And I think that like exact line gets repeated like
a few times. Yeah. Well, it's interesting how he plays up the juxtaposition of the Asgardians with the Oklahomans, and they're not that different. Like there's a lot of similarities between these. You know, down-home folks from Oklahoma and these down-home folks from Asgard. Mm-hmm. Like, they're both small towns in their own way. Like, everybody knows everybody. So that when the guy's like, hey, is Kelda home? They're like, oh, yeah, Kelda.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So I found a thing on my notes.
Yes.
Okay, so a thing that both annoyed and, delighted me was that all of the exposition was Loki explaining things that she had already done. And it was like, you would see it, like you see her leaning over like the body that Lady Sif is trapped in. And you're like, oh, I think he took her body. Like clearly something's up there, right? And you're just like waiting for somebody to figure it out. And then Loki comes out and says it, like I took her body and you need to save her now. And so you're like, oh, well, now he looks like a good guy to Dr. Blake, but he's not because he stole her body. And just like, I think there are like 4 or 5 examples of this where you're like, somebody's going to figure out what he's doing.
Yeah. And again, it's him manipulating. Like he manipulates Thor into killing Bor, but also breaking the staff or breaking the hammer. Mm-hmm. And then he manipulates Thor to go and rescue Sif at the last minute, making herself look good, but also forcing Thor to have Doctor Strange repair the hammer in a way that makes him more vulnerable because he's bound to it now. It's part of him. Like, Loki throughout this is making these incredibly cunning moves and setting people up to do things that simultaneously make her look good and force them to do exactly what she wants them to do. Like, very often when it comes to those kind of manipulations, like it feels like it's like, why is this person doing this thing? Well, because that's what it means for that's what we need for the story to go forward. And in all of this, like the manipulations feel clever.
Yeah.
Like you don't quite recognize what's happening until it's happening. And then once it's happening, it's like, how do we stop this from happening? There's no way. We have to just keep going forward.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredibly well done.
Indeed. So, Cade, Brent, did you have anything else? I mean, we've kind of turned this thing backwards and forwards.
Yeah, we have. And a lot of this book for me was moments. It was just that there were times I found myself like cursing the characters for not realizing something sooner, or laughing out loud, and my sister would be like, what's going on? What's so funny? I'm just like, oh, this book. And it was a good read. Like, I mean, there were those panels I didn't like because of the baby face, but where it's just like, I have this super awesome Thor picture that could be a poster if it weren't for the baby face.
One more thing that I really liked was Dr. Doom in this book. Like, I thought that he came off incredibly cool. Like, he felt like he was operating on the same level as these gods.
Right.
And the whole interaction between him and Balder, like, we have to live by the laws of Latveria. I thought you just said that we didn't have to follow, like, America was where you had to follow the laws. So it's like, well, the laws of America or Latveria are the laws of doom. And like they kind of go back and forth and have this whole conversation. Mm-hmm. Like JMS's dialogue is not often what I would necessarily call like witty. Like there's not that witty repartee.
Yeah.
Repartee. But at the same time, like it's clever.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and like you follow it and you kind of like, you find yourself like, ooh, he really got him there. Like, like.
Yeah. Like the people who are talking all feel like people, like they feel thoughtful, like they're really thinking about what's being said and not just delivering dialogue. Mm-hmm. That, when you have those kind of like witty retorts, it can feel very like I'm reading from a script. This is a script right now and I'm telling the joke. Did everybody hear me tell the joke? And it doesn't feel like that in this book. Like it feels like these people are considering and responding. So, yeah. Brant, did you have anything else?
No, sorry. I was furiously looking at trying to remind myself that one of the other things that I think this lays the groundwork for is that Loki has this long arc through this series and in Dark Reign in general that kind of culminates in Siege.
Yes.
Where Loki basically betrays Asgard and then in that process realizes that his path has led to kind of imminent ultimate ruin for everything that he may not hold dear per se, but certainly is not
considers important,
and so he ultimately dies actually in that process. But I was just trying to refresh myself because I was like, this ties into Siege, and it's kind of a long road to get there. Like Loki kind of puts a lot of points on the scoreboard during this time, but it ultimately kind of blows up in his face, as is the way it tends to work with Loki.
Yeah, I think honestly there are only like two kind of, one kind of herky-jerky moment where you have Thor returning, and he's talking to Iron Man, and Iron Man is director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then it goes off and does its own thing. And the next time it kind of interacts with the wider Marvel universe, it's when Iron Patriot and his Avengers show up, and we're in Dark Reign, and like you don't really notice that transition until it happens.
Right.
And so if you haven't been reading the other books, if you don't know when this is taking place, like as a new reader, that could feel a little bit odd because like, wait, what
it
happened
was
to Iron Man?
A little jarring because I actually didn't know who that Iron Man was. I actually know who Iron Patriot is, so now it makes sense. But I was picking him out like, oh, that's Moonstone, and who's that? Like,
yeah, and what's awesome is that as of last year, Iron Patriot is now James Rhodes. because movie tie-ins. Yay.
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 Cool.
So yeah, and then I mean, of course, the only flaw with our read through this time is that we didn't get to finish the series. Like, it keeps going after JMS leaves, and the stuff that happens after this is still really cool.
Yeah.
Like, this was a very good run on Thor, not just J. Michael Straczynski's part in it, but the entire arc, especially leading into the post-Siege era when it becomes Journey into Mystery again, and you get Kid Loki and he's doing his thing, and that's being written by Kieran Gillian. That's freaking incredible. I have actually wanted to pitch that for the show on multiple occasions, but it's like 37 issues or something like that.
A commitment.
A little bit longer than I necessarily feel comfortable pitching on an episode of the podcast, but not quite long enough to be its own long run, which is an unfortunate position to be in. But maybe we'll do it at some point.
We'll do a back matter on it. Something.
Or do a special one of the short run.
Ooh. New series.
New series.
Awesome. So do we want to move on to recommendations?
Sure.
Awesome. Brent, you want to get us started?
So I read something today that made me very interested / excited, which of course is the final announcement and revelation of DC's quote unquote Band-Aid event, which is called The Convergence.
Yes.
Which suggests that there will be
50-something issues released in a 2-month period that you have to buy all of. Yay.
We'll see. But of course, all the buzz around that being potentially that, is this the return of the pre-52? Is this the establishment of a multiverse in which the new 52 and the pre-new 52 exist? Is this the final death blow to
everybody has been saying about the new 52 Futures End?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, all this buzz around this. So that inspired me to say, well, let's look at how it all began. So I proposed to read Flashpoint. Specifically, Flashpoints number 1 through 5, Booster Gold number 44 through 47, and the Flash Volume 3 number 8 through 12, which is the prelude to Flashpoint. And so we can talk about how we got to the pre-52, or the new 52, from the pre-new 52.
Okay.
And that's what I think we should read. Because I'm like, hey, maybe they'll bring back the old people that I know and love. Of course, with some of the writing decisions that they're making right now, it wouldn't matter because they'd still be bad. But there are good stories happening in the new 52. We don't talk about them often on this show, but there are, true. Which is why I think some folks are hoping that what this will lead to is, in fact, an actual quote-unquote convergence, which is the good stuff from the new 52 and the good stuff from the pre-new 52 merging together somehow into some shared space.
So I wouldn't even mind if it was just Marvel Comics, Ultimate Comics, like this is the new 52 universe, this is the pre-52 universe. They are separate things. We will do stories in both of them.
Yeah, because apparently Earth 2 is ending in solicitations.
Yeah.
So there's a buzz that could potentially be what replaces it is basically a line of books that are not Earth 2, but non-new 52.
And they just launched a new Lobo book too. What's going to happen with that?
Yeah. So who knows? I think right now they're just throwing everything they can at the wall, and they'll see what sticks.
So,
Flashpoint.
Yeah, Flashpoint. In all its different titles that it appeared in.
Yeah, I chose the primary prelude and then the primary run, because it crosses over with Booster Gold, and so my understanding is that you would need to read both, because I haven't read it all.
No, nor have I, in fact.
But then, of course, there's like 30 miniseries books, and I'm like, yeah, we'll skip those, because they're interesting. I've heard some of them, but not relevant to my interests as far as being like, hey, let's see how we got where we are. That's my pitch.
I'm not going to pitch it this week, but at some point, one of us needs to pitch post 52 Booster Gold.
Oh,
good series. So, Cade, what are you pitching?
Okay, so I am going to pitch book 3 of a 3-part series that we've already talked about the first 2 of. So I'm pitching Paradise X because I feel like we have read Universe X recently enough that we will remember some of it. And if not, we can listen to the podcast just to brush up on what happened and then read Paradise X. Just because I think that it has some interesting things, and it also, in it defines more about. We find out more about the universe that the Earth X trilogy exists in, since from a lot of Earth X and Universe X, it can exist in 616, but where does it exist? And
So what you're saying is you were inspired because now it's getting dark real early, so that if we're going to spend all this time inside, we might as well basically read the third part of this doctoral thesis that is the universe, the Earth X trilogy.
Well, and also this book we just read had the ghost of Steve Richards with the hood.
Rogers.
Steve Rogers with the hood up. And I was just like, you know what this reminds me of?
Yeah, which I completely forgot about and is completely anomalous since he never really died. Retroactively, sort of.
Yeah.
Time bullets. Yes.
However,
Thank you.
it
Who did
could
that?
have been something.
Was it Brubaker?
I think it was Brubaker.
I think it was Brubaker.
Thank you.
It was weird because it came oddly close to the time bullets in Final Crisis. And it's like, really, time bullets again?
Maybe Grant Morrison is everywhere. Watching everything you do.
He's
Writing every story that you read.
he's Randall Dowling from Planetary. He stretches into your mind and you become him.
I was thinking maybe he's some sort of strange version of the three-faced robots from the Transformers universe.
The Quintessons?
The Quintessons. And so like each face is a different name.
They have-
and that explains
they have
why he
more than
writes
three
very
faces.
different stories. Do they have 3 or 4?
I think they had 4 or 5.
Quinta, 5, maybe. Guilty or innocent.
Innocent.
Yep.
So, Paradise X.
Paradise
I've
X.
never actually read it. It's the one that I haven't read.
All right, I'm
Oh.
just cracking up at you guys. So yeah, in it, after the events of Universe X, should I spoil the end of that since we talked about it on the show?
Yeah. Spoiler warning. Go back and listen to whatever episode number we talked about Universe X. in.
Go read Universe X.
Spoiler warning. Go read Universe X.
So Death died at the end.
Yes.
And so in Paradise X, one of the guys starts to create a paradise in the nether dimension, or whatever it was called. I don't remember. And so, for the dead people.
Gotcha.
And then the living people find out they can't die. And so there's some ramifications there that they need to respond to. And then X-51 creates a group of alternate dimension heroes to go to other places to warn them about the celestial seeds.
Interesting. Question:
It's
Is
Marvel
Howard
who does the
Marvel? Okay.
is Howard the Duck in it? This is important.
I don't remember. I actually haven't read this, but I have read things about this.
Okay.
So, like, basically somebody's thesis on the thesis.
Like you do.
Like you do.
It's theses all the way down.
So that's my pitch. We've talked about books 1 and 2. Why don't we finish it and read Paradise X?
Nice. Kaylee, what did you bring?
I didn't bring anything because somebody has my copy. But anybody who's been following us on Facebook knows what I'm going to pitch. And it's Captain Marvel because, god damn it, I'm going to bring it back every goddamn week until we pick it. There's a movie now. It's coming.
In
it's here.
3 years.
Does not matter. It
Katie
was
Sackhoff
announced.
needs enough time to get herself fully immersed into her
It
character.
Might not be
Wait.
Katie
I
Sackhoff.
It really
it
should
it
be.
should be. Yes.
That's what everybody says. Literally,
Hold on.
like
I just got really excited. This is a thing
Captain Marvel?
with Katie Sackhoff?
Wow,
no, that's just
Oh.
what everybody's speculating.
Yeah.
And
She's made intimations that she might have a deal with Marvel to do something.
I post on a message board on the internet pretty regularly.
You
and
use the internet?
yes, I know, dangerous, dirty, dark places.
That was only for Facebook.
Somebody started a thread which was literally speculate on who will be Captain Marvel. Parentheses, if it's not Katie Sackhoff. Because, I mean, God damn it, she'd be pretty much perfect.
Yep,
Even I have to admit it.
Yes.
she really would be.
All right, so just Captain Marvel
Captain Marvel.
by Kelly Sue DeConnick.
Yep.
Just volume 1, or is there 2 volumes now?
You know what? Let's go for both. Let's
Yeah.
go for the 2.
As many as there are.
Well, there are 3, but
Are there 3?
Let's
all
go
right,
for
well
the
then
2.
let's go for 2.
Wait, if there are 3 out, why don't we talk about all 3?
Because the third one is like it's separate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of like
it's not part of it.
not
Yeah.
a it's not
Excuse you. Okay.
like a
it's
reboot or anything.
excluded.
It's like this story is done and now we're moving into a new status
Okay,
quo.
so if we read the first 2, it ends on a decent point.
Yeah, because I'm
Well,
pretty
even
sure
the
it's after
first-
the second one that she goes to outer space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
She's in space, like
Well, then how is she leaving to
30.
go into space? Now I'm confused. Now I feel like I have to
She
read
leaves
volume
space
3
to
to
go to
understand what the
space.
hell's going on. She leaves space to go to space. I'm going to go through that door over there and come in through that door
Well,
over
I mean,
there.
really, are we ever not in space? I mean, it's not like there's a barrier between us and space.
God.
Like, at what point, like, you're going up and up and up. What point are you in space?
once it gets dark.
Once you can't breathe. I don't know.
Okay.
The troposphere. I'm
So,
not
yeah,
sure what
anything
that
else
is,
that you
but-
want to say about Captain Marvel, Kaylee?
I don't know. I feel like I've pitched it a bunch of times.
Okay,
Everybody
just
should
See,
go-
listen
see,
out.
see the last 3 episodes
Yeah,
with Kelly on
listen-
to hear the pitch for
Listen to the last episode with Kaylee on it for her pitch of Captain Marvel.
No, it was the one before that. Because the last one she picked another book by Kelly.
Oh,
Sue
that's
Oh,
right.
yeah,
she
You guys
did.
gave me flack about that. And
Ooh.
Yes, rightfully so.
no,
didn't.
it's like they're
Bad,
both,
Kaylee.
They're both
No.
good.
I don't think I gave flack for that.
They are both Kelly Sue DeConnick books, so I guess that's close enough. Anyway, now it's time for my pitch.
Yeah, we don't
Best
really
pitch.
care.
Yeah, I don't really care either.
All right,
I'm
I'm
going to
voting
pitch a book that I don't want to read by a writer I hate. I'm going to pitch,
Fables by Bill Williams.
actually, close. There were 2 books on my list that I was planning to pitch. Fables was one of them. And I will probably pitch that at a future date because I think it deserves to be talked about and because people have been asking for it.
And you want to yell about it?
Yes. Actually, I like the first volume of Fables. I think the first volume is really good. It's the later stuff that I don't like as much.
Gotcha.
But the book that I'm going to pitch is by somebody I hate more than Bill Willingham. I'm going to pitch Superman Red Sun by Mark Millar.
Ooh.
And if you've never read Superman Red Sun, this is an Elseworld story where Superman comes to Earth 12 hours later on the other side of the planet, and he crash lands in Russia instead of Kansas. And so he is raised as the communist Superman. The communist Superman. And he's like buddies with Joseph Stalin, and he takes over the Soviet Union and runs it as only Superman could do, and actually like makes it work. And it's this like whole crazy alternate world story.
And for some mysterious reason, all other heroes become Soviet heroes.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's all about Superman, really.
Soviet Wonder Woman. Soviet Aquaman.
Soviet Comrade Bat,
Comrade Bat.
Who is in the Injustice game?
who has the coolest hat ever,
It's true.
which
Hey,
is basically just a hat with
with
bat ears.
with bat ears. Hey, you got to keep your ears warm, and you got to make sure that you're menacing those who fear you in the night.
But this is a book from early in Mark Millar's career, when he was being mentored by Grant Morrison. And if you've read it, you can definitely see Morrison's influence on the work. There are some intimations as to how much help Morrison did or did not actually give to Mark Millar in the creation of it, and who is responsible for what and how much. But I'm not really going to get into that here and now. Maybe if we pick it, we can talk about it on the episode. But it is one of the very few, perhaps the only Mark Millar book that I can say that I enjoyed. And it's a very popular Elseworld story, and I think it's worth talking about. So my pitch is Superman Red Sun.
Because Kirby has been trying to get me to read Superman forever. She's like, here, you'll like this because you hate Superman. And she was right.
Awesome.
Oh, don't hate Superman.
I enjoy him now, but at the time I was just like, he's cheese, right? It's
I
the
think that-
same argument
I
that
think
everybody
that-
else has.
Much like Jesus, everybody needs a come to Superman moment.
Yep.
You need to hate First, when you're a kid, you like Superman. Then you hate Superman. And then you learn to like him again.
Yep.
Insanely big Superman to affect change in your life. Wait. Hold on.
Isn't that what everybody does?
Yep.
So, Brant, what are you going to vote for?
This is really hard.
I say that almost every episode.
Yeah, you're going to be saying it again in a minute.
Playing Cade for this evening is Brant Eddy.
No, I actually know what I'm picking.
But wonders never cease.
I really don't know.
Do you want us to come back to you?
Oh.
You can play tiebreaker if you want.
Yeah, I'll play tiebreaker.
Okay. Cade.
Captain Marvel.
Kaylee.
Flashpoint.
See, now I don't know if I should make things hard or easy for you.
If you vote for Universe or Paradise X, Brant has to choose.
Yeah, and I don't know if I want to read Paradise X. I feel intimidated.
Yeah, you see, one of the reasons that this became so difficult is that it was hard enough for me to pick between his awesome Superman story, yay Superman, and Captain Marvel, because I'm super jazzed to read it. But in the process of looking up to remember who it was that Cade was talking about, I caught snippets of Paradise X, and I have read, and I was like, oh, yes, I remember that. We must discuss this concept, because if listeners may recall that I waxed quite not eloquently, but I babbled inanely about Universe X and some of the things that he chose to do in the Earth X and Universe X, and so it just gets
a good episode,
crazy, and so it's just like it's so hard. My dilemma.
All right, well, I'm going to vote for Paradise X. Then, so now it's on you.
Damn it! My coin is not in my pocket.
No coin flipping.
No coin flipping.
It's against the rules that I just made up using this flag.
You don't have a flag.
I have a very tiny flag.
And I back it up with this gun.
That I got from the National Rifle
Association.
Thank you, Eddie Izzard.
Ultimately, I'm very sorry to Kaylee because I want to read Captain Marvel, and I support the bringing a book back until people bend to your will.
I swear to
but
God.
But Paradise X has to be read.
I will ruin your lives.
All right. I just don't want to reward bad behavior. See, Brant did it. Now everybody thinks he can do it.
That's right. I got away with it. Now everybody wants to do it.
But you should definitely bring Captain Marvel back again. Probably a little bit closer to when the movie actually comes out.
That's 3 years.
Yes, exactly.
Well, okay, so if we talk about books
and
1
maybe
and
by
2
then a 4th volume will be out
soon, then we can talk about 3 and 4 after 4 is done, and we could just talk about all of them until the movie comes out.
Yeah, that could totally be a thing. But for next week, we're going to talk about Paradise X.
Yay.
I am so sorry, everyone.
Mark Wade, on the off chance you're listening to this, finish Empire Volume 2 so I can pitch it and we can talk about it.
Working on it.
It's 10 pages a month. It's going to take like 3 years to finish.
Yeah. And then we can talk about it.
After the Captain Marvel episode.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody.
See ya.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to View from the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.